All right. Well, thank you for joining us today for the Chantay Golson Show, where every entrepreneur and executive, C-level and higher needs to be tuned into, because we're going to be talking about productivity, profitability, cash flow, mental health, mental wellness, and wealth, and so much more. And I'm so excited to introduce my audience to Miss Kramer. She's here today to help us to understand the power of high performance. And we know, guys, that we need high performance. Why? Because the power of high performance helps us to understand what we're to do throughout the day, how to maintain our energy, and the list goes on and on. But I'm not going to be a spoiler alert. I'm going to let Ms. Kramer let us know all about these aspects. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you so much. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here today, and I'm doing really well. Coming here from Ireland, so I'm really happy to be there and to join you.
Well, thank you so much again for your time and being here. So introduce yourself to us and tell us, there's a story that you have about being a missionary. So kind of help the audience understand your journey.
So yeah, thank you. I'm Saskia Kremer, and currently I'm working with CEOs, higher level management, business owners who are successful, but who really feel time challenged, and who are rather running behind all the emergency, all the stuff that needs to be done. And I help them to create that bigger vision for themselves, for their business, for their teams, and to step out of the overwhelm and be able to perform at their best. Now, you mentioned it. Thank you very much for mentioning. I am a missionary. I was a missionary. I was in the missions for 13 years. I worked alongside Mother Teresa and traveled the world until the beginning of the age of 30s, in my early 30s. I had basically given all, and I had forgotten myself in the process. I had been traveling the world, leading projects, leading international communities, and helping people to discover in the midst of the biggest distress that spark of humanity and how they could bounce back in the most difficult situations. But I had forgotten that in order to be able to continue to give, I also had to resource myself. And so then I knew I had to do something. I had to take a break and step back and find out myself where I was coming from, where I was going, and why I was there. And so that led me to take a step back and to get out of the missions and to find my way in another, fill my life in another way.
So it sounds. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so then I started my own business.
So before we get to your business, in which we're excited to talk about, I know my audience will not be pleased if I do not ask you about Mother Teresa. I know they will not be pleased because this is an iconic person that we've heard a lot about. And a lot of us have not seen her, or, we just heard about the things that she's done. Can you tell us a little bit about her, and then also how it is or was to work alongside of her?
Yeah. Well, to say the least, she was a very captivating woman. And I met her for the first time when I was 12 years old. And I remember as a child being completely absorbed or fascinated by her, the way she was present, the way she would make you feel absolutely the most important person on earth while she was talking to you.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the biggest things that drew me as a young teenager to longing to be able to be like her, to live that dedicated life. She was extremely focused, but she would be really there when she would be talking to you. And she gave me one of the biggest lessons when at the age of 16, I was in the House of the Dying in Calcutta. And she basically set me on a bench next to a woman who, and I will never forget her gaze, who was in agony, who was going to die. And she set me next to her, and she left. And I was there. I was only 16 years old. I was greatly impressed by the environment I was in. And I was one-on-one with this lady who had nothing left and who was going to pass. And I remember sitting there, and the only thing I could do was take her hands, look in her eyes, and be there for her beyond all the differences that would be there if we would have met in different circumstances. And take her hand, to be there and be just there, opening my heart and being there, giving her the last warmth that she would receive in this world. And that is what drove me to want to explore that more. And that is what led me to join the missionaries when I was only 18 years old in war zones and in situations of terrible distress. And she would be extremely demanding because of her drive, because of her focus, and yet so human, I would say. Which is something that I have rarely seen, and I think that is something that serves me now as a executive coach and being in the working field where I am, to be able to create that presence for whoever is there, and allow them to look at themselves and have emerged the beauty of each person in no matter what kind of circumstances.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us. And you actually started the point that I was going to ask you concerning how did that experience really help you in understanding how to serve in this particular capacity as an executive coach and a trainer. So after you left the missionary field, you were sharing with me prior to taping that you had to learn a skill yourself. So tell us a little bit about that and why executive coaching?
Well, actually, I joined the missionaries when I was 18. I was completely burned out, as I mentioned, around the age of 30. And I decided that I wanted, with all the skills and all the experience that I had, I wanted to put it at the service of people who were most in need. And Mother Teresa always taught us, you don't need to go to India, you don't need to go to the poor countries to serve people in need. And whether you are serving the rich, whether you're serving the poor, there's always the human person. And so when I came out, of course, I had to earn a living. And I was looking for a job, and nobody would take me. And they would tell me, we can't put you in a box. We can't. There's no place for you in the working space. So I had seen a lot of different situations, and so I thought, well, I don't take no for an answer. So if you don't have the job for me, I need to create it myself. And I wanted to have all the experiences that I had, and my philosophical background and my leadership skills, that in an international community I was able to exercise. I was responsible for the learning and development of the young sisters who came. I was responsible as a superior for an international community being responsible for the temporary needs, but also for the spiritual needs and everything that, basically everything. So, and I really wanted to put my experience to the service of people of whom there is a lot of demand, executives and directors and senior management. There is a lot of demand. And I know from experience that if you don't take the time to step back, to resource yourself, you can get overwhelmed by all the emergencies, all the necessities, all the demands that are there, from the start of the day till the end of the day, and if you're not vigilant enough, 24/7. So with my experience, I wanted to create that space in which business owners, directors, executives can drop all that, all the things that they need to do to create that space so that they can resource themselves, ask questions, grow, become better, and also have that space where they can simply be who they are. And sometimes maybe rediscover who they are at the core of their being, so that they can even be better leaders, be better managers, and create that environment for their business and their teams to perform at their best.
Now, I want to say that moving from a missionary to your own company, that's what we call pivoting. And so, a lot of women, a lot of men may have given up or may have said, well, let me just take anything. Can somebody hire me for any reason? And so I commend you for understanding the power therein and not giving up on that. Now, because of that, your servicing of CEOs, directors, business owners, you help them create vision for themselves and their business to increase their performance and productivity of their teams without the stress of overwhelm. So with that being stated, you state that a morning routine is pivotal, is very important. So let's kind of talk about what is the importance of a morning routine for this audience.
Well, I have been, my morning routine, I would say, was maybe the most challenging things, which I was struggling with because I knew the importance, but I couldn't get my head around it, how I would do it. I have 2 young children, and that can be really challenging when they wake up early. I'm a single mom, so I don't have the luxury to say, okay, well, to a partner, you take the kids and I do my morning routine. And yet I felt it was something very important to increase my performance, not to lose time in the early hours of the day and not start my day only when half is gone. So I looked into, okay, what is possible for me to kick off the day and yet without being a stressful moment than a helpful moment. And so I looked into what were the possibilities, and I created the time where in the evening, not only in the morning I need to perform, but already my morning starts the evening before. How I set up or how I close my previous day and how I already set up for the next day is key. And so then I go to bed, and in the morning I'm already aligned. I'm already in action to continue or to start the day.
Yeah, waking up with is very important. I also subscribe to the evening routine to prepare my day out. And before I close out the business day, I also write down things that are needed. And then later that day, because as an entrepreneur, sometimes your mind just continues to think and think and think about the things that you have to do. And so one thing that I subscribe to in that evening routine is brain dump. That
Yeah,
means
absolutely.
everything that is coming in my mind that's relevant to business and even personal, I just write it down. I just get it out of my brain, and then I order it. And I have a time management system called Order of Organization. Then I get into that process. So when I wake up, the goals are already there. I already have a roadmap. So I do agree with that concept. Now, what you've learned from these particular processes, tell me, what is the importance of resilience?
Well, I think resilience is something I hear people say, I have had in my life, I had my fair share of bumps in the road and ups and downs. And people tell me, and also when Corona hit, oh, Saskia, you manage because you are resilient. You know how to bounce back on any situation. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But that is something, for me, it's not something which is natural. It's not something that some people have and some people don't. I think it's something that you create. It's a muscle to exercise, a muscle to train. And if you don't start training that in times when things are relatively easy, if that's the case ever in life, but when things are quieter or more peaceful, or even in the midst of the storm, to build that resilience one step at a time. And that, I think, is one of the big lessons that I learned from Mother Teresa, and which she would tell me as a teenager, but which I value more and more as the years pass by, is one step at a time. She would always look at us and say, don't count the numbers. And yet, if we look at her, she has created a huge community. She has created a huge network of people who are serving people in need. And yet, she taught me not to look at the numbers, one at a time. And if we have big dreams, if we have big aspirations, very good, and I'm all for it. But without a plan of action, where we create that moment where we can bounce back, and that is what I like about resilience, is that creating that momentum, creating from one little step to the next, doesn't have to be big, but to exercise that muscle to go from one to the next by staying in the moment, which is today, which is now, and to be really absorbed by, okay, what can I do now without losing the sight of my goal? What can I do now to get there? What is the little step I can make today, I can make now, to get where I need to be? Even if that means that life will throw things at us, and that is just part of life. As long as we keep that presence to what is happening now, to rediscover why we are doing what we are doing, and from there on create that opportunity to be creative with what we can do instead of looking at what we can't.
Okay.
And I think that those are the three key things I would say, which are important in every business, in every life, to tap into, to be able to bounce back.
So how do you translate Mother Teresa's statement in one at a time? How do you translate that to the entrepreneur, the director, the CEO, the people that you service? How do you make that real for them? I know you stated focus on what you're doing. I'm paraphrasing, focus on what you're doing right then and there. A lot of times that's very difficult when you're in high demanding positions. So how do you translate Mother Teresa's statement one at a time and learning to have self-awareness and mindfulness in that particular moment? How do you teach? What's one technique, strategy, tip, and or statement that helps this resonate with your audience?
Well, I think the first key is to create clarity. to create clarity for yourself. Who am I? Which is already a huge question. Who am I? To become more and more clear about who you are as a person. What or why are you doing what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And what are you really good at? So to create that path, that clarity of, okay, what am I doing? Who and where am I in that process? And why am I doing what I'm doing? Because as soon as we lose sight of why we are doing it, we can't bounce back in difficult times. And so it is what happens when we are in the overwhelm, or when we are in the demand, is we are more with the person who is demanding or who is requesting or the emergency than we are with ourselves. And we lose sight of who we are and what we need to perform at our best.
So the value is focusing on who is demanding something from them versus them understanding what demands they personally need, such as learning to focus. So you talk about that you also help your audience increase focus and performance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I love to talk about that. Absolutely. And I think it's one thing that popped up in my mind was, when we are planning, who is, and that is part of focus, is who is deciding what is an emergency.
That's good.
And I always say, don't let the lack of planning of someone else become your emergency.
Tell us more about that. Made me say, well, like I'm in church. Tell us more about that.
Well, if you let other people decide, picking up their phone and say, hey, I need you because this is happening. Someone else taps into you and comes with an emergency, while you have not yet decided whether for you, for the goals you have set, for the things you need to do, that is an emergency as well.
Okay.
So instead of being directly in tune with the one who is asking, to take a step back and say, okay, I hear the request. Is this an emergency for me? Yes or no? And it can very well be that it is an emergency. But to create that little space, and sometimes it's just a split second, of, okay, is this an emergency that I need to attend to right now? Because if I decide to make it my emergency, it means that I need to leave something that I was busy doing. Okay. And maybe I was in the middle of something that absolutely for me needed to be done before noon, or before, which had to be done now. So I need to make the decision if this emergency that comes in is worth me postponing the things that I need to do now.
So how do I do that if I'm in a position of not being the president or the CEO? If I'm an executive or middle level management, how can I tell my boss no or wait? So how do we make that practical enough to respect the other person, and respect the wildly important goals of the whole company? How do I say that?
Yeah, well, I think that is part of when I am working, even as an executive, I'm also working towards the goals of the company.
Right.
So I need to make sure that in the communication, for example, I was working with the CFO, and he said, I need, at the beginning of the week, I need to make clear what objectives or what goals I am working on in this week. And so everything then comes back to communication, and say, if you at the beginning of the week can communicate the main things you are going to work on during that week, it is way easier to say, okay, wait a minute. We have talked about the goals I have now. I understand this is an emergency. Do we consider this as something that is worth putting the rest aside for?
Okay.
Because then you remain the owner. You really take ownership of the things that you need to do, and of course in accordance with the emergency that pops up. But you bring it back to, okay, do we really need this to happen right now? Or is it, can it wait and I'll book it in for tomorrow or next week? So then it becomes more a way of communicating in which you respect profoundly. You take serious your own job, because what happens otherwise is that your workload keeps piling up, and you never get to do what needs to be done, and you get the blame after.
Right. Yeah, attending to other people's needs is one of the aspects that hinders your ability to hit your outcomes and your revenue. And so with that being stated, understanding how to say no, which is a full sentence, is very important. And so with that being stated, that is one of the aspects that zaps your energy, always going and putting fires out or attending to what other people say that are emergencies, because it's coming from their perspective.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about performance and increasing our level of performance in leadership and management positions, what are we really talking about there? What is your philosophy there? How can we perform even better?
Well, I think the first thing to know is, okay, increase my performance, but also increase the knowledge of who I am. What is my zone of genius? As we were talking about before, is it because my boss asks me to do this that I am the best person to do it? It doesn't mean that because technically I'm capable of doing something that I should be doing it, because it may be something which is on the long term absolutely draining my energy, and is not refueling me from within. Now I can do that if it's an emergency. If nobody else can do it, I can do it as a once-off. But I need to know whether the activities I'm doing are draining my energy, or are they giving me energy from within, so that I am not out of proportion tired at the end of the day.
So in layman's terms, we're talking about two factors here. Number one, we're talking about the factor of self-awareness. What I can do, what I can't do, what I shouldn't do. Those things are very important, because we can do all things. I can put paper in the copier. I can go and give everybody lunch. I can sit at a meeting and discuss contracts. I can do all of it. But what is worth? What's the value in my time? So my value is doing what I only can do as a leadership. I'm the only one that can go and negotiate vendors and contracts and have conversations with other CEOs and etc. But who on my team then can do the rest? And so we're really talking about, in layman's term, the power of delegation. And that's a powerful tool in leadership.
Yep. And as you say, being able to say no. And that is I can only say no if I am clear on what I am the best at. And also being clear what the other team members, where their expertise is. Because then I can say very easily to someone who says, okay, can you do this? Say, that's not it's not that I can, that technically I'm not able to do it, but so-and-so is way better at it, does it way faster, and that is where he or she excels, not me.
Mm-hmm.
So it is knowing, and by setting these boundaries, where sometimes as it may be difficult to say no, but there, if we keep doing that, we are compromising our best performance, and we are just wearing out.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not serving anybody.
Right. And especially we're not serving ourselves, because by the time the end of the day we are exhausted, and guess where we take that? We take that exhaustion home, and we do a lot of displacement. So and displacement is simply I'm giving innocent bystanders all of the negative energy I have because I wasn't able to give it to my boss, or wasn't able to give it to the people in the meeting, or etc. And so it is very damaging, especially in burnout and overwhelm, and long-term periods of stress, which is overwhelm, is a dangerous thing, because you can really affect your personal relationships. And those
Absolutely.
are one of the things that I teach as well. So, I appreciate you sharing these particular tools with us. One thing I want to know is, you have a guide, an actual tangible tool that we can download and take a look at it. Can you tell us where we can find that, as well as the name of it?
Yeah, so it's the high performance guide. You can find it on my website, saskia.ie/high, what do you call it, little stripes, performance. You can also find it on the homepage under freebies. It's a guide I created to give you a jump start of ideas that you can start implementing straight away to increase your performance. And it's not, I don't say do everything, but just pick out one or two. As remember, one step at a time. Just take out one and apply it seriously. Apply something that resonates with you, that you're like, okay, well, that is something I want to try. Do it for a while, implement it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then see if there's something else that you can add onto it, or you can implement. Don't do it all together, all at the same time, because you won't be able to do it consistently, and that is what is most important.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Saskia Kremer. It is such a treat for you to be here. So tell us where we can reach you on social media. If someone wants to become a part of your social media platforms, where can we find you?
You can find me, my main platform is LinkedIn, under Saskia Kremer. So it is SASKIA KREMER, Saskia Kremer, on LinkedIn, and that is my main platform, and my website is saskia.ie.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And so we want to give just a closeout for our audience today. Remember, executive CEOs and high level management, remember that your time is precious. And anything that you give your time towards, make sure that it's valuable enough to help you to outperform your yearly review that you had last year. Make sure you outperform. Not only that, make sure that those that are in business focus on aspects that will help you to increase your cash flow and your revenue. And that is, number one, being self-aware, according to what we talked about today. That is also understanding to take it one step at a time. Implement a morning and or night routine for you to have clear goals. And please learn how to delegate tasks that would take you away from your increase of cash flow as well as your outcomes. So I thank you for joining me today on the podcast, The Chantay Golson Show, where we air every Tuesday. So take a look. Also check out our YouTube page, where you can find valuable information, not only from listenership, but this will be a video there of my guest and I. And so thank you again. Make it a productive and great day. And we will see you next Tuesday.